Hi guys, this is Rodney Walker here with Grant Central USA, and today I'm so excited to bring to you a special guest, AnGèle Cade, and she is going to share some valuable information with you. She is the top person over at Executives on the Go, and she has a wonderful business that's been helping organizations and entities all across the United States since 2002 to set up the right business structure. So I don't want to steal all of her thunder. I'll let her share with you herself what she does and how she helps nonprofits. And trust me when I say you want to make sure that you stay tuned to listen to what she has to say, because what she has to say can definitely enhance your business and also possibly put more money into your business. So with that said, welcome, AnGèle.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Rodney. This has been definitely a long time coming in terms of us getting connected this way. So I'm really excited to be here.
You know, I don't think you're not as excited as I am. You're excited on this end. You know, I've heard so much about the wonderful work that you're doing, and I've got a chance to admire from afar. And with that being said, you know, I'm glad that we do have this time. You help nonprofits in a lot of ways, but in some real special ways, and not just nonprofits. Will you tell us a little bit more about what you do? And I'd love to find out, how did you get into all of this? So tell us about what you do, and then let's back.
Wow, you want to go all the way back.
I
So
want to go back.
about what we do, we help clients structure. You know, the heart of our business is making sure that people have the right entities, that they have the right structure, and that they're able to use it as a vehicle to get where they want to go. A lot of times your business is meant to be your retirement, to be your exit strategy, or even to be your legacy. And we want to make sure that those things are set up right and that it makes sense for what your vision is. There's nothing like having a business and it's being structured wrong, where when you get ready to make a move, when you get ready to raise money, go public, you know, be acquired, go into a franchise, license something that you've created, no matter what it is, just making sure that the structure can handle the vision that you have for it. So that's what we do. We help people just make sure that they have the right structure the first time, and that it can be done right so that they can feel comfortable and confident about executing their business in the real world.
Wow. And that's so important to have something like that, because so many organizations and so many individuals, when they're starting out, don't have the right structure or don't even know what the options are. They just kind of start into business.
Yeah.
And you help to guide them in that process.
Yeah, no, we do. We help them navigate the waters, because what happens is a lot of people, you know, they hear about the business or they think, well, oh, you know, I heard I should get an LLC, but they don't realize that in it, there are accounting fundamentals, there's legal fundamentals that have direct impact on why you would choose that structure. So what we do is we help clients dispel the myths around a structure to see what's actually applicable for them. Like, the scenario might make sense for someone else, but it might not work for you. Maybe you don't need a pass through. Maybe you don't want a certain vulnerability. Maybe your taxability is something that you need to consider with your accountant when you're making this next move, but because of it, you haven't unpacked all the pieces or realized all the impact. And so as consultants, we're able to get down and dirty with like the grittiness of the conversation, where you can have a safe place to bring out all of those fundamentals, all of those facts, so that you can choose the right structure up front. There's nothing worse than when somebody is in a structure for a while only to realize that it doesn't make sense for where they want to go.
Wow. It sounds like I'm hearing you say that most people don't even know what they don't know that they need.
Exactly.
Well, that's great that you were able to come alongside. And I want to unpack that some more and find out a little bit more about that, because I know you probably see a lot coming your way with people with these different structures. And since they don't know, what are some of the challenges that you've seen firsthand? Because you guys have been doing it since 2002, and you've helped a lot of people.
Almost 20
How many people?
years. Yeah.
How many people have you helped?
You know, last year we crossed over 15,000 people that we
Wow.
served.
Wait, don't rush past it. Let me give you a big high five.
Boo.
15,000 people. That is
Yes.
incredible.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been an exciting journey. You know, me and my husband, we do the business together, and we just, you know, we've made it our heart's work to make sure that people, you know, are taken care of. And if we can do, you know, we do one-on-ones, we do one-to-manys, we do have a lot of, you know, accountants and attorneys that we work with, that we service through. So it's with all those pieces that we're able to make a difference, you know, in our space of small business to serve other small businesses.
I really like that. And I like the fact that you already have some people that are on your team. So if a person is starting out with business, what I'm hearing is that they don't have to necessarily, they don't already have an accountant, or they don't already have some of these other business people that they need on their team. You may be able to help to kind of facilitate, or at least do some introductions, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Absolutely. I mean, we definitely need a team around us. None of us get to where we're going, you know, on our own. You know, we need professionals. We need the professional advice, and we definitely need them to execute as needed. I think what happens is a lot of our clients realize that with us, they're equipped to ask better questions. You know,
Mm.
they're equipped, they're empowered to ask, you know what I mean, the, you know, from a better perspective, so that they can get the most out of those relationships. For a lot of our clients, we really act as a bridge between them and the professional that they need. You know, we do need accountants, we do need attorneys, but if you don't have the right questions, you can waste a lot of time. And so just making sure that you're empowered with as much information as possible up front.
That's excellent. So let's backtrack now. Why don't you tell me, how did you get into doing all this? And then I want to look afterwards at some things to help people in some really practical ways, because I know there's some people out there that are looking at starting nonprofits. Some are looking
Yes.
to start their own business. Some, like you just made mention, are looking to license, and even others are looking to be able to leave a legacy. I had a conversation a little earlier today with one of my good friends, and we were talking about that. So let's look at your history. Tell me, how did you get into all this? How did you and Brandon get into all this?
So basically, what happened was I'd have to go back to college, because in college I was a counselor. I was a holistic counselor that dealt with the attrition rate of the African American population on campus. I graduated from UCLA many, 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 many moons ago. And when I was there as a counselor, we approached dealing with the attrition, dealing with the retention. We approached it from this very unique, holistic perspective. And that really has been the base of my style of consulting. And so that's really in the heart of where the business started. As far as consulting, it came from that place. It came from this realization that I can talk to a client, and yes, a client will come and want to start a nonprofit and will have this idea of philanthropy. But the reality is that if they aren't taken care of personally, it's hard to have the conversation about giving to others if other areas are out of order. So I realized that the mental, emotional, this you know, how their business, you know, how they are personally, it has impact. So I am gentle towards that impact because it does correlate to the business. So that's a part of our style of consulting that is very different. When I left, I left as the assistant director of this counseling program, and I ended up working for an attorney in Beverly Hills who was a who specialized in collections, which was huge. Because what I learned was, I learned about Dun& Bradstreet, I learned about business credit, I learned about liability separation, I learned about skip tracing. I managed a staff of skip tracers. I knew what it meant to pierce the corporate veil because I was on that side of it. So then it equipped me to be able to understand how to defend it, protect it, how to layer it, how to make it hard. The people who we couldn't get after became curious. I became curious because I was like, why can't we touch them? Oh, because of this paper trail or that paper trail. So in that environment, I got that experience and that understanding. And so, and then also while I was there, I began to understand a lot of the government assignments, because with working for a collection agent, as you can imagine, if you are 8A certified, back then you could be you could be certified through SBD or different types of certifications to be minority owned, women owned, veteran owned, you know what I mean? Like all these different being an impoverished zone, empowerment zones. Like I began to understand the workings of what it meant to get those contracts, be on those lists, because that was one of the processes that I was helping that firm with while I was there as an administrator. And so all of that experience I got there. And then After, for those of you that are in Los Angeles, after hating the 405 commute, I decided I was no longer going to be going to Beverly Hills for work every day. And I had a friend who went to an accountant, and the accountant was brilliant, almost like savant brilliant. And
Wow.
the office was in such disarray. She had a hard time like seeing past the disarray. And she told this accountant, she said, "You need my friend to come in here and fix your business." And so she ended up getting me a job with a CPA firm in Encino. And that was my
Wow.
last job. That was the last job that I had. So I was the controller of a CPA firm for a few years, where I got his practice together. I managed a staff of junior accountants and staff accountants and bookkeepers, and also his clientele. And he specialized in asset protection, and he did webinars. And this was, this is over 20 years ago. He did
Wow.
webinars specializing in Nevada entities and Delaware entities, and things like that. And so it was really exciting. And towards the end, he was the CFO on a company that was doing an IPO. And this is where it gets interesting. So he completely leaves the practice. He's in this company that's doing this initial public offering, and he hires me in both places. So I'm also doing work for this company. They did not have anything together. They didn't have their private placement memorandum. They weren't filed properly with the SEC. I mean, just everything was a hot mess, but they were making so much money. So across my desk was $9 million in 6 months.
Oh,
And
wow.
when I saw this, and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is really happening. Like, this company is getting funded. The owners did not reinvest the money in the company. These guys gave themselves a raise. They went on trips. And when it was, and I just think that they thought that they could outpace the money, and money was going to keep coming, but that wasn't the case. So what happened was, eventually I had to start letting people go. People started filing reports. It was horrible. They started filing claims. Well, the SEC came in, and the amount wasn't big enough for them to even pay attention to it. They were like, "Oh, that's nothing. That's small. Like, you know what I mean? Good luck with that." And only one person sued, and I ended up letting go of the whole staff. And my boss at the time, he stopped coming in, so he went AWOL. I wrote him a
Oh,
Dear John letter. His wife was like, "No, stay." So now this time, this is like 2 payroll cycles I haven't been paid because there's no money. And I said, I just gotta leave. I just gotta go. Well, when I left, I got my claim from the labor board. I won my judgment, and I took it to an attorney, and he said, "No problem. I'm going to get you your money." And then I went back a few days later, and he's like, "I can't get you your money." I said, "What? You told me you could get me my money." He says, "No." He said, "The way this is structured, I can't touch
uh,
it." I said, "What are you talking about?" Because by then I was the one doing all the structure. I said, "I structured
sure.
it. I set everything up. I did all this stuff." I said, "I could tell you everyone behind this." He said, "No, you don't understand. Because of how it's structured and how I have to go after them, I can't touch them because they're not connected to the liability of this part." And I said, "But you don't understand. I did the structuring." He said, "Well, you did a great
Good
job.
job.
You can't get anything." So I have this judgment that I could never collect on because of what was created. And that's when I brought that home to my husband. The light bulb hit, and that's when we started the business. And besides that, a number of the clients came, and they realized that I was doing the work, and a lot of the clients followed me to continue to support them in the work, and we've never looked back since.
Wow, what an amazing story. There's a song, AnGèle, there's a song that I was listening to. It's an old James Brown song. And
Uh-huh.
as I was thinking about hearing that song, as you were telling your story, the song says, he says on the song, "And I'm super bad." And so I'm hearing you are a super bad lady, because what I've heard, you just told me, one, you have this counseling background from UCLA that you got. And then there's this whole other background that you got from being in Beverly Hills, working for this law firm. So you have the legal side, and then there's this whole other side on the CPA side with the accounting.
Yeah.
And that is an amazing collection. And I can see why all of those pieces coming together makes you the unique person that you are, and what you offer to be such a great service for people.
Thank you.
Tell me,
Thank you.
you're welcome. So tell me this,
Mhm.
with with you've just given a story that's kind of illustrated the importance of why these structures are so important. Because
Yes.
on one end, I'm hearing you set up systems that people can't touch your assets or put a judgment against you directly. How does this apply to somebody that's maybe thinking about starting a business, and right now maybe they're operating as a sole proprietorship, or they don't even have a structure? Help
Yeah.
guide a person like that, Angel. What would you say to somebody that just came to have maybe they've been even doing business for a few months and just haven't set the structure up? What do you say to somebody like that?
I would say, you want to be able to get a sense of your own temperament of risk, because when you start to dive into asset protection, there's a particular way that you want to navigate the paper trail of what you do, so that if somebody was to follow you, that the structure itself makes sense. But if you were just starting out, if somebody was a few months in, it depends on their risk tolerance. It depends on the amount of money they have. It depends on how much they're willing to invest in themselves. And because everyone's temperament is different, their starting point might be different. For someone who comes in that has a sole proprietorship, for them, they might need to prove the business model. They might need to prove it first. And then after they reach a certain target, that aggregates or that triggers a step of what needs to be created. Oh, when I cross this amount of money, then
Mhm.
it's time for me to do the structure, because then it makes sense, because the structure will be able to take care of itself. And then for other people who have more of a, this is what I want to do no matter what. I'm not, what I mean? I might be trying to figure out how I'm going to get there, but I'm not going to let go of this vision. For those people, they might want to create the structure to house the idea and house the risk or house the growth, so that they can build it in a certain way where all of the paper trail for it is self-contained. And so it just depends on the person's temperament. But some places to start, I would say, to kind of take stock of your own kind of risk tolerance and vulnerability. For some people, privacy means the world to them. And if that's the case, then a formal structure is really a better way to go, because once you have to think about the points of vulnerability. You become vulnerable once you engage with a client, and now they give you an exchange of money for work. That makes you now responsible to execute the work. So that's a place of vulnerability. So do you want to be vulnerable yourself personally to provide or produce that work? Or do you want it to be in a structure that's separate from you? So being clear on what you want that relationship to be, because whoever they're in relationship with, that's who's potential for a lawsuit. So we always want to look at the space and say, okay, if there's a suit involved, who are you in relationship with? Whose name is on the contract? And for those of you that have a fictitious business name and you're like, well, I do everything in my DBA. If you are the owner of the DBA, then you and your DBA are one. Oh, I've got a tax ID number. The tax ID number was based on your social security number. That is not strong enough. So you want to make sure that you are putting the things in place so that you know where your risk is being had. And for a lot of people, sometimes it's about aggregating those steps. Number one, I would look at the amount of money, because if you are still in your research and development phase, then maybe you need to work that out as a sole proprietor until you're ready to launch. And then you could create a date of that within the structure. So just being cautious of that. If you are creating a product or something that has proprietary, right, properties to it, something that's
Mhm.
licensed or something that's registered, you want to think about who owns that registration. Is it you personally, or is the registration going to be owned by your company? Because when you sell your company later, you want the registration to be in it, so that it's extremely valuable when somebody's ready to buy it. So just kind of thinking through, what is the paper trail, who owns what, and who are you in relationship with?
Excellent. How does this work? I have a lot of people that are interested in doing, especially nonprofit organizations.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them come to me because they're wanting to get a grant and they haven't set their structure up. So for those who are unfamiliar with that, would you kind of share what you guys do in terms of helping them to go about
Yes.
establishing that so that they can kind of start wrapping their brains around that?
Yes, absolutely. So with a nonprofit structure, a lot of times up front, I want to be clear. A lot of people see nonprofits and they're very, very different. They're very unique. But with nonprofits still means business. It still has profit. It still has, you know, it still has expenses. It still has nonprofit. Just means that the profits are not going to be for the gain of an individual person. You cannot own stock in a nonprofit. You're not going to own membership in a nonprofit. There's no personal profit for an individual person in the nonprofit. And so when I usually have that conversation up front, then I could see the person's bewildered look, like, how am I supposed to make money in this? Well, you make money because you're an employee of the nonprofit, right? You make money because maybe there is a service or something that's reasonable in terms of the relationship between you and the nonprofit. Maybe there is something that you're providing, but either way, the relationship is clean and clear, and it is according to like the standards of what that relationship should be. So if you're on salary, it doesn't mean that you get paid way above what is considered normal for the rate of what that nonprofit does. So just being mindful of that. But the process, okay, so first kind of doing a check and making sure, okay, no one owns the nonprofit, and I'm good with that. Be very clear, because
That's important.
it's
That's
very
important.
important.
Wait, Angela, you're popping some bubbles into people right now, and I know I can hear them right now. Like, wait, what? So that's good. So no one owns a nonprofit in that sense.
No. A lot of people get into it and they think, and even people who have been in them for years, I'll see them come in and they're like, but you know what I mean? But you know, my nonprofit. So even their language is ownership. And I'm trying to retrain them to even correlate the nonprofit. You know what? The nonprofit I founded, right? Use the right language. The nonprofit I founded, that, you know, I'm chairman of the board of the nonprofit. Speak in your roles. You will always be the founder. You will be on the board. You may be the executive director, but you will never be the owner of it, because that's a very dangerous place to sit in, because if you sit in that role too much and too public, you could lose your exemption.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people make that mistake, Angel. They don't. I don't even think the role has ever been taught to them, and it's, in one sense, it's okay, because none of us are born with a nonprofit DNA gene, you know. But that doesn't mean that you should stay ignorant either. And I think just getting informed to kind of understand how this all operates before just diving all in, you know.
Yes.
I think that's really important.
I have a story to tell you when I'm done telling you about the setup of a client that
Okay.
ran into an issue in their nonprofit that would speak to that. But first, definitely getting clear on the relationship when you found it and when you started. Your one opportunity to get your team in place, when you appoint your board members, that's your one kind of opportunity to make sure that the people that you place on your board, the board becomes responsible jointly. The board is what needs to be indemnified. The board is what's held responsible. So make sure when you put people in that position that they're, number one, clear about their responsibility, but then also number two, that you are comfortable with them being committed to the purpose of the organization, because that is what the IRS, that's what the Franchise Tax Board, that's what the Department of Justice, the Attorney General's office, whatever state you're in, whatever, all the agencies that govern this nonprofit status and in charitable status, they want to make sure that this is not what they call a dummy board, a board that's just made up of people that are going to say yes to you.
Yeah,
So,
I know some people were thinking, man, I got some dumb board members. No, thank you for clarifying that. We're not saying you got a dummy. No, wait a minute.
Okay, maybe some.
there may be some. Okay.
But not
Okay,
on your board, right? Not on your board.
Exactly.
So setting up your board. So this is part of the process that we help you through. So making sure that you can answer these questions, because these all become a part of your bylaws. How many times have we ran into nonprofits that don't have proper bylaws that are executed, not realizing that copies of your bylaws are needed over and over again? They're needed for applications, they're needed for grants, they're needed for everything. It should have the clarity of who you are, how you function. But so many times people just kind of lend themselves to a generic template of a bylaws and don't really speak to their purpose or how they're governed. or they never read it. Maybe somebody gave it to them, or they bought it in a kit and they have it in their binder and never signed it. It is a document that should be brought to life and paid attention to, because it's basically saying how you're going to be governed, and it proves to other people that you're actually functioning in a compliant way. So you want to make sure you have bylaws. You want to make sure you have minutes. You want to make sure you have resolutions. Every time you execute something, you want to make sure you have a resolution. With our clients, we make sure you have all your initial minutes and resolutions. The first relationship that you should have after getting your articles and your tax ID number, the first relationship you need to go out and get is the relationship with the bank. And you should have a resolution that speaks to that. How many times have I had clients who are like, oh, we didn't start yet. I don't even, well, do you have a bank account? No, I didn't open. What? You're not ready to receive money. That should be the first relationship you have. Right?
Exactly. Especially if you want a grant and you ain't got a place to put the grant, you gonna put it in your pocket? No.
Or you're still using your personal account because it's more convenient, right? No, it is a business. It needs its own relationship, its own account, in its own name, completely separate from you, where you are only the authorized signer. It makes for a clear paper trail, right? So then we do those things, and then we start to focus in on the exemption process. So it's about going from being formed to actually now being exempt, and what that looks like. There's a certain amount of disclosure and certain things that need to be provided to all the agencies that provide exemption. So we start with the IRS, and we make sure that everything that can to help your file, to help your case, to help it be exempt is connected to your file. So your program narrative, what are you doing? Who's executing it? How much time is spent on it? What is it going to accomplish? Your board, where are their resumes? Where are their bios? What are they adding to the board dynamic? Your budget, what do you plan to do? What does it look like for you to execute in the first year, the second year, the third? So these are the things that we look to. Your different policies that are in place so that you're not out of compliance, making sure that you are looking to, hire people accordingly, or making sure that you're separating and looking at if there's any relationships between the company and board members. All those disclosures have to be done with the application, and that's what we walk you through. We are with you until your exemption is in hand. And so the IRS exemption is typically first, and then after that we deal with the state exemption. Every state has their own version of exemption, and so depending on the state, it depends on what we do. But typically at that point, it's about just showing the IRS exemption and then supplementing it with what that state needs. The reason why a state exemption is important, and I will say this because I've had clients who do the federal exemption and then they'll say, well, I didn't know anything about the state. The state, you pay state income tax on where you generate money. And if you are not registered as a tax exempt nonprofit organization, you will still be subject to the state taxes in that location. So you want to be cautious of where you're domiciled and where you're actively doing business to make sure that you actually have the proper state exemption. In California, it means the world of difference. California has an $800 minimum state tax. And if you're not state tax exempt, you will have to owe it. Oh, but I'm a nonprofit. Oh, but I'm registered as a 501. That's cute, but you're not tax exempt. So it's a whole different application, and you want to make sure that you have it executed. The other thing is that there's huge benefit. It can exempt you from state taxes, including state property taxes. So it's a very powerful exemption to have. Don't ignore it. You could be exempt from sales tax depending on the nature of your business. So you want to consider and think through, where are all the places where I need to be exempt so that my nonprofit can benefit, even down to your business license. Are you notifying them that you're a tax exempt nonprofit? Because you could be exempt from certain amounts there, or at least reduced amounts, right? Property tax reduced amounts. So you want to be able to get as much benefit from being a nonprofit as possible. Then there is the state attorney general. being registered as a charitable trust. It is vital, because what happens is, if somebody is raising money, if you're doing fundraisers, if you're doing events, if you're doing anything like that, then the Attorney General is what keeps track of that and verifies information. So they get information out of public record. So if you don't give them information, they're going to find information, and then you'll be out of compliance with their charitable registry. So that's an important relationship to have that a lot of people don't realize needs to be in place. And now more agencies, more than ever, are selling and trading information with each other. They're sharing information with each other. So the moment you do the articles, all of a sudden list gets populated, and then it gets sent to another agency. And you're like, why am I getting a bill? Or how come this agency knows this about me, but this part is wrong? Because you didn't go to them in advance. You allowed them to get the information through their channels, and now they're reporting only what they see from those respective areas.
Got it. Wow. So the cool thing is that it sounds like you're working with nonprofits and helping organizations to set up entities that are nonprofit, as well as for-profit entities in various states, not just in California.
Yes. Yes.
Excellent. You had a story that you want to tell me about with an experience. Tell me about it.
I do. It was a story. It was very, I want to say it was about maybe 15 years ago. We have a client, amazing, dynamic person who was running a nonprofit, a very beloved community organization that served young people. And so basically, she had founded the organization. She had vehicles, she had the building, and they were doing after school programs. And so anyway, she was married, and her husband had passed away. And they had a ministry, and so and he had a number of assets, and so she basically took over, and she got remarried. And as she remarried, she brought her new husband on, and actually brought him on the board. You know, this is her new husband. She brought him into the mix of all the work and stuff that she was doing. And so slowly, after about 5 years, you know, the board dynamic starts to change as people retire, but now the new board members were loyal to him. And so they ran into some difficulty and ended up getting a divorce. And as they were going through the divorce proceeding, she got called into an emergency meeting where she was fired and voted off of the board.
Wow.
And she came to see me, and it was our first relate. Now she'd been a client for many years after this. So she was referred to me because of this. And my heart just broke, because there was really nothing we could do at that point because of how it was structured, because of what was in place based on the board. There were no provisions in place for her as a staff member, for her as the founder. I mean, honestly, even the property itself was gifted from her to the organization, whereas the property, when you start to talk about hard assets, you have to weigh the value, because easily the property could have stayed in her personal family trust, and then she could have gifted what would have been the rent. And then after, let's say, if that was a scenario and they voted her off, she could have been like, okay, you are getting a 30-day notice out of the property.
Wow.
But because she didn't have those provisions or those things in place to protect the hard assets, or to, you know, leverage and contract her relationship, or even things that were noted that were loans that weren't resolutions and weren't in writing. So then she had to walk away from monies that were owed to her, that were loaned to I mean, just so many layers of things that weren't considered, that if we were together, we could have made provision to protect her. But then this is what was left after the damage had been done, where she literally had to just walk away from her legacy and life's work in that organization. And it just broke my heart. And I never want anyone to go through that again if we can help it.
Wow. Moral of that story is, ladies and gentlemen, don't bring your spouse onto that board. No, I'm just saying. but seriously though, I love the part of what you're talking about. Cover yourself, protect your assets, because if you don't, something like this can happen. And you brought up a really important point. With a lot of work that I'm doing, AnGèle, I know there are a lot of nonprofit leaders, and they pouring their heart and soul into these nonprofits, like the lady you may mention. And then there's some of them that are at the verge of retiring, and they've actually placed their, maybe not their physical property assets like the lady you made mention of, but some of their intellectual property has been actually like given to the nonprofit organization. Will you speak to that and maybe share some ways that those leaders who have contributed so much can start separating maybe their legacy, maybe their property, their intellectual property, so that they can leave a legacy instead of leaving it with a nonprofit organization?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you want to differentiate between the two, you know, and sometimes it's reasonable to leave it sit in the organization, and other times, no, it is a part of your legacy, your work, your voice, and it's tangible and it's profitable to the organization. And if it's part of your retirement plan, if it's part of what should be income to your family, then you have the ability, you have the opportunity to leverage it as so. You know, when you create something like a workbook or a handbook, if you create a process, if you're creating something that you're able to license, you know, consider being the owner of the license, consider owning it, and then allowing the nonprofit or giving it the right to the nonprofit so that it can use it, so that at some point you could negotiate a percentage, or it could generate income for your estate. I mean, it's one thing to have your life's work out there, but then it becomes very hard and really sad when, you know, how do you pay someone back for giving their life to a cause, when there's so much that might be like commingled or intertwined? Look at the things that are tangible, look at the things that are intellectual, and begin to really draw a line and decide, what can I register, what can I protect, what can I own, what can I be listed as the owner on, what can I, right? So you begin to look at it and then work through that, so that you can begin to, again, distinguish, identify, and then determine what is going to be best for your estate, your family, your legacy, without necessarily infringing on, impacting, or you know what I mean, or taking away from what the organization is meant to do.
Yes, and I'm so glad you said that, because oftentimes what is given, AnGèle, as you and I both know, is a handshake, maybe a watch, a pat on the back, maybe a plaque, okay? So you've given your hard assets, and you're walking with a plaque instead of a process that you can take to continue to make more money for yourself, and can actually be your retirement.
Absolutely.
Actually be your retirement. You help. So if someone was in need of that, in need of maybe even going a little bit farther and being able to see, hey, how can we structure that maybe in terms of an entity afterwards? Do you guys help in that area as well?
Absolutely. We have clients that come to us, and in their heart, you know, as human beings, and about 5 years ago, I started a hedge fund with a partner, and you know, when we were exposed to family offices and we were looking at the wealthy, we were looking at how they manage, you know, at the core of a person, philanthropy is always a part of that conversation. Whether it's you creating your own, or distinguishing between understanding what it means to give to someone else, or establish a foundation, or have a cause that you're connected to. But the workings of multiple strategies is definitely something that I think people just need more information on, so they can be clear on how to develop those multiple entity strategies, or how to execute, you know, and have this nonprofit organization and be ready to kind of go out and do the work, and also be able to protect and have some semblance of legacy for themselves, or navigate it with their for-profit in tow, knowing that the two can't be in relationship with each other, as a lot of people mistakenly think. I get people all the time, well, can my, you know, I want to start this nonprofit and I'll own it. No. No one own you. A for-profit can't own a nonprofit. I said, but a nonprofit can own a for-profit, because it's like Salvation Army having the Salvation Army store. It can have for-profit arms that are generating income for its cause. And so being clear on what is possible in terms of relationships, and being clear on like why, you see, when you're looking at big companies create foundations, you know, a lot of times we look at the wealthy and we're like, gosh, you know, they do this and they shelter this and they're able to save. Well, we're able to do the same things. We just don't do it because we don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. I guess here's a great spot right here for an advertisement. Can I just put this out there? Don't be a dodo bird, okay? Now, let me say this, okay? By dodo bird, don't be someone who does not know. And what I'm hearing you say is there are benefits, there are advantages, and the only difference between those that are doing it and those that are not is that they've taken the time to get the information, whether that be learning on their own or connecting with an advisor such as yourself that can help them to learn what they need to do to get informed, to take advantage of these opportunities.
Yes.
So don't be I'm gonna say it, okay? Don't be a dodo, okay? Don't be a dodo, and go to AnGèle when you need. Come to me. Come to other resources that you have that are at your fingertips. Now, AnGèle, tell me this: you covered a lot of stuff here, and a lot of information. You told me about some new changes and some new structures that I didn't even know about that were coming, that you heard about in some other states. Tell me a little bit more about some of these new entities. I know we have the S Corp, the C Corp, we have the nonprofit, the LLC, the LLP, and I feel like I want to do like a disco track, like LP, like, long play. We're not talking about long play people. We're talking about limited partnerships around here, okay? So,
oh my God,
what are some of these new ones that are out there that are coming to the surface?
So one of the things that I would want people to be aware of is that structures, they exist based on the need of businesses. So LLCs are relatively new in the world of businesses, right? So the grandfather of them all is C corporations. All corporations start off as C corporations, right? It's the granddaddy of them all. It's the first, type of entity that existed. So over the years, what's happened is that people realize, okay, those rules, they don't really apply, or we've got to figure out a way for other people to be able to benefit or us to navigate. So then we saw the introduction of what it meant to be recognized as a different tax classification, the S corporation, small business corporation. So you move and you fast forward and you got C and you got S and you got LLCs, which is again, the fairly new, the hybrid between the corporation and the partnership. It's great. And then what we saw this emergence of what was called these B corporations. So I was like, CSB, like what's a B, right? So B corporations are basically, it's a specific classification that you get. It's a certification that you apply for. And basically it is one where you are allowing for transparency in your business so that you can commit to a cause in the world or some form of philanthropy. So a lot of times what they've realized in the last decade or so is that people are willing to pay more if they know that the company is being transparent or has a cause. So companies that are B corporations are like Tom's, the shoes, where they're like, hey, for every shoe we sell, we're going to give a shoe away to somebody who needs it. Well, that's their commitment. That is their company culture. So because of that promise, they actually applied for this B certification. So the transparency is that we are going to do everything that we say that we're going to do for this particular group or this particular cause, and people love it. And because of it, they're willing to pay more because of that transparency. It's not that they're not profitable for their stockholders, but they are willing to pay more. So that's one kind. The other,
let me ask you something. Where's this located right now? Because I know some states may have already adopted it, others haven't. Where is that particular entity structure allowed currently?
So it is allowed in California. There are a few states, and I want to say that it's still fairly new. So you're talking about less than 1,000 that have gone through this particular process in the world. You know what I mean? Wow. Because the classification is universal worldwide, where it's recognized within structures. And so that certification is once you've committed to this particular kind of way of doing business in your articles, then you apply separately for this certification with this outside industry or agency that determines it, and then that's where you get the certification from.
Got it.
And
excellent.
then you have to stay up to date on what it means so that you can continue to carry or have that B corporation certification identified with you, right?
Yeah. Excellent.
The probably the second one, the last one that I would mention, which is fairly new. It's only about 3 years old, 4 years old, is what's called an L3C.
Hmm.
And that is basically it's a variation of basically a LLC, where it's supposed to fill a gap between for-profit and nonprofit. It is very new. Like I said, what's going to happen is we're going to see a lot of case law. We're going to see a lot of things that are going to be pushing the envelope, just like with all new structures. It's not in California. I want to say that it might be in maybe like 4 or 5 states,
Okay.
but it's not widespread yet. But people are looking for a solution that kind of bridges the gap between nonprofit and for-profit, so that they're able to get like investments into the structure and have
Hmm.
some type of like repayment, but yet be connected to a social benefit or a philanthropic cause. Because what happens is nonprofits have, limitations on how they can raise money, right? So you can't
Sure.
do that. So they're trying to figure out a way to bridge the two. And so what happens is, because it's only recognized on certain state levels, then it's not completely recognized on a federal level. So it becomes hard
Okay.
to kind of determine, but it's in the works. And I tell you, when people are determined to see things adopt and see things change and get answers for things
Hmm.
that they want to, work out better. Like, how many times does somebody come in and say, well, this is mine, or I want to benefit from this, but I have this cause that's for the old community and I want to do it. And I want, right. So people are coming in with kind of this wantingness on both sides. And the L3C is the first kind of attempt to see how it could satisfy the people who are kind of like, hey, I want the best of both worlds. And I'm willing to, you know what I mean? I'm willing to engage in something that kind of, teeters on both sides. So that's something that's coming down the pike as well. So just look out for
Interesting.
it. Yeah.
L3C.
Yes.
Interesting. Do you know if that's structured? I would imagine that it hasn't, since it's not widespread, but do you know if that entity structure yet is one that's going to be able to possibly receive grants, or is right now it's more still on the for-profit side of things?
You know what, it's what's going to happen is, and this is like LLCs with contractors. There was for years, so when LLCs first started, when you went to get a contractor's license, LLC was not an option. You couldn't be a contractor and have and this was years ago. And I remember, and
Okay.
people were like, why can't we? It's because the agency didn't recognize the structure, because they didn't feel comfortable with accepting it because it was so new. So it's
Sure.
going to take time for foundations and grantors and government agencies, whoever's distributing. It's going to take time for them to recognize, you know what I mean, that the L3C as being a truly nonprofit, grant worthy type of organization. And so
Okay.
really kind of considering how the federal government is going to treat it, that's going to predicate if people are going to allow for it to be recognized for grants. I have a short list of the 10 states. What is it? Yeah, about 10 states that recognize the L3C right now.
Rattle that list off for us real quickly. Can you rattle
Illinois,
it off for us?
I sure can. Illinois, Michigan, North Dakota, Kansas, Louisiana, Maine, Rhode Island, Utah, Vermont, Wyoming.
Wow, great. And if I'm understanding this correctly, also a person can be in a different state and still apply for some of these entity structures in different states. I know there's some different pieces to it, but am I correct
Yeah, you
in what I'm
can.
saying?
You absolutely can domicile in a different state. We have clients that are here that decide to go to Wyoming. Is a very progressive state. They've got really great state tax laws, so we get a lot of clients that go to Wyoming, Florida, Texas, Nevada for many years. But every state has its benefit, and so definitely you can domicile in another state, but it needs to make sense for your business. So you can't be at a brick and mortar down the street and then say that you are only existing in another state. That is not going to make sense for your licenses or your permits or those types of things. But if you are doing all of your activity online, well, then you have a little bit more flexibility. And if you're going to go to another state as the place where you're going to domicile, the place where you're going to be born as an entity, you'll have to have an address. You want to have a phone number. You want to make sense to reside in that state. And so just consider those things. And then there might be reason for you to register as what's called a foreign corporation where you are now, so that you can be active in both states. So just kind of considering that if going to another state is a strategy that you want to employ.
Wow. So you guys clearly see why AnGèle is one of my secret weapons around here, one of my new secret weapons, right? Because you're very informative, very knowledgeable. And I love that you have those different areas of your background that you've been able to pull together to bring about this executive on the go.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've got to get in touch with this super bad person in a good way. And AnGèle, how can someone, if they want to get in touch with you, they want to engage your services, where do they need to go, and how do they reach you? And tell us a little bit more about that.
So I would say definitely come to my website. It's execonthego.com, execonthego.com. You can click a link very easily to schedule an appointment. We do offer free initial consultations just to see how we can help, what some areas of need are, and where we could go from there. There's also a free handout that's available on the website as well for you to get more information. Just those of you that want to be able to kind of read a little bit more about what we do and what we offer. So all of that is available on the website. So it's execonthego.com, and everything's on there, the phone number, where we are, and you can just feel free to click those links and get us, and then we can definitely schedule some time, and I would love to talk to you.
That's great. And you also have some new exciting videos on there as well. And I saw this new updated website, really, really nice, by the way.
Thank
I saw you and Brandon, and then I saw some videos there. So go check that out. Do you have I know you have a YouTube channel because you got those videos, so they can reach you and check out some of your videos as well. Where is that, by the way?
All the social media links are at the bottom of the site. If you want to connect with us, we've got our Executive on the Go Facebook page. We have our LinkedIn page. We have our YouTube channel, which is Executive on the Go. We have our, you can follow us, on Twitter, wherever you like. All the links are down there, and you could stay connected in the conversation as things come up. I definitely, make sure that we're out there giving out as much information as possible to support our community and our clients, and especially just, those that we look to serve. So please check us out.
Well, guys, be smart. Go bring her on your team. And also, I know some of you are out there. Your head is spinning right now because I told you not to be a dodo, and we don't want you to be a dodo. And that's why we bring this here. And all kidding aside, guys, it's like the information is where the power is, and we want to bring this information to you. And that's what I'm bringing resources like AnGèle and others to you, so that you can raise your financial education awareness, as well as being able to protect yourself with these structures that she talked about, to help with taxations and things of that nature, and protection of yourself, your assets. So take advantage of it. And this won't be our last time, guys. So you may have some questions. So make sure you guys stay in tune, stay in touch, and we look forward to connecting with you soon. AnGèle, thanks for being a super bad woman here, helping so many organizations. Continue all the great work that you're doing, and we'll be in touch real soon. All right? All the best.
Right.
Bye-bye.